Most educators, whether science or engineering or any related area, talk about the engineering design process. So it's that circle we've all seen, and it's a circular process for a very good reason, in the sense that you're always analyzing after your tests, and then you're improving the product. You might send it to market, but you're still making improvements. And we see that every day with our phone software, right? They send us our phones, it has software, and they keep doing upgrades and fixes. But a lot of educators, they skip the engineering mindset. Now, there's a lot of pieces to that, but one major one that I find really useful is thinking like an engineer from a system and functional standpoint. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is engineers break things down by function. So you don't just look at a system and say, hey, anything with wires and electricity is the electrical system. You actually look at what that system's doing. The first thing engineers do when they try to break down a piece of equipment or machinery or software is they break it into systems, subsystems, and components. Now there may be subsystems, right, different levels if it's complex, but that's typically what engineers do, so that they're all kind of categorizing and speaking the same language. So if I take this controller here, right, kind of a standard gaming controller, we might have an electrical subsystem. That's pretty obvious. The battery, some of the wires in there would contribute to that. There's probably a charging port on it. That would be the electrical subsystem. Now, what other systems do we have? We got to have some kind of receiver system, right? So a transmitter and receiver. So this would transmit whatever buttons I'm hitting to the device that's receiving it. So some kind of communication subsystem. And then one of the most important ones, and now some people would put these buttons and just say they're components, but I would actually put them under a user interface subsystem. So anything the user is touching, all these buttons right here, are part of that user interface subsystem. And the buttons would go under it. And there may even be, if there's some software menus, that software might live under that user interface subsystem. So now as far as components, underneath that electrical subsystem would be the battery. Underneath the subsystem for the user interface would be all these joysticks and buttons. So when an engineer looks at something, they try to break it down functionally. Now, some people may say, what's so important about that? The reason that's important is, let's say I want to upgrade the user interface subsystem. I want to make this a better controller. I want to go to a touch screen instead of hard buttons. Well, do I have to touch the electrical subsystem? Do I need to touch the receiver subsystem? Likely not. So that's why a lot of engineers choose to break things down by function. So as you upgrade features or upgrade functions, then you are affecting only that subsystem, and you're working on it in sort of a closed environment. Now, it may influence other things. If you go to a touch screen, you may need more battery power to make the device last for a certain amount of time. But that's why engineers think that way. It's one of the things we like to cover with students, so that they start seeing that in their mind. They look at a car and they don't break it down by, hey, how fast is it? They start breaking it down by what are the different features it has, and how do those features fit in subsystems.